Well, hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is 7Demo7, and today we're going to be doing a build on the YD2. This is going to be quite a long video. It's comprehensive. I'll be doing the full build. When there's portions of the video that's going to be kind of long and monotonous, that are like repetitive things, I'm going to go ahead and do a time lapse or a fast forward on those sections. Now the tools that you guys are going to need, the ones that I pulled out for this build right now, are really simple. We have a basic plier, some Loctite, a 1.5 millimeter and a 2 millimeter hex wrench, snap-off blade cutter, and a little tool caddy to put my screws into so I don't lose them. Now normally when I do a build like this I would have my build mat on the table, but those are mainly black and mine is too, so having a black table and filming is not an ideal situation. So that's what we're going to do. We're just going to do it on this nice light colored table so you guys can really see what my hands are doing. As far as Loctite goes, you guys always want to use a blue Loctite. This is a red Loctite, but it's in the chapstick form. Now you can get this from auto parts stores, and these I highly recommend them. When you use a very small bit of this red Loctite, it becomes removable, whereas normal red Loctite is permanent. But I've been using this for years, haven't had any problems whatsoever. Just another quick housekeeping note, this is going to be a build of the full kit without the electronics to start with. The part 2 of this video is going to be full electronics. Now I'm deciding to actually use some components that I have on hand that are brand new, which is the Trackstar line from Hobby King. Now I know a lot of you guys are going to be shaking your heads right now saying, what is he doing? Well, I have the full Yokomo gamut on my other car, my YD2EX. So I thought it would be a nice contrast and comparison to put some basic less expensive components on this very nice frame just to see how they perform. I have had experience with the 80 amp ESC from Trackstar. What we're going to be adding to this kit in the part 2 is the 10.5 motor and also their drift servo from Trackstar as well. So without further ado guys, let's go ahead and get started. If you guys are a follower of my channel, you'll know that this is the ES120 electronic screwdriver and this is the Wow Stick. Both of these are for screwing in long screws so your hand doesn't get tired. I do a lot of work with my hand, so that's why I have these. I'm going to be using both of these on this build. You don't have to have something like this, obviously. All you need are some drivers. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to open up the box here and we're going to get out the instructions. Right off the bat, we're going to start off with the chassis. So, and this is going to include some of your battery stoppers for mounting your battery in different directions. I think I'll probably be using this further back design here, or maybe one up from that, but I can always change it as we go. So I'm going to go ahead and pour all these screws out. I'm going to separate these screws from the 14 M3x8s and the 6 M3x10s. Now, one of the reasons I recommend having a nice snap-off knife is when you take these parts off the trees, there's always a little bit of residual left on the parts. Do yourself a favor and take those little bits off at this point. All you need to do is take your knife and just shave off that little portion. Just make sure your fingers are not in the way. Okay, first we're going to be doing battery mounting things first. Okay, so let's... Okay guys, so keep in mind that there is a little notch that comes out of these battery holders, and there's one that goes to the right, one that goes to the left, so there's obviously going to be an A and a B. So these slots correspond to the slot that's in the frame, so make sure you guys keep that lined up. And these are going to be using the M3x8, so the shorter screws. I'm going to be running my battery crossways here, maybe here or here, so let's just see about where we're going to keep our battery. I'll go ahead and run this in the far back to start with. So it looks like these last two holes are where the furthest back position for your battery is going to go, so that's going to go right there. So you're actually only going to use 2 of these battery slides here. Battery guides, I should say, not slides. Alright, so, and these are a nice tight fit, those little slots. They go right into the chassis. What a perfect fit. Okay. I know that screwing these screws into plastic is a lot of torque, so I know that the screwdriver probably won't do the best as far as screwing these things in, so we'll see how we're doing here. So that one's stopped. Let me just try the other one real quick, and if these both suck, then I'm just going to go ahead and just use my regular screwdriver. Well, the ES120 has a lot more power. Didn't quite get it all the way in, but it got it 95% of the way there. Wow, perfect. That's good. So that's what I want this screwdriver for, is to get 90% of the screwing done in, so I could just hand tighten the rest. Okay, so we are now going to do the front and the rear A-arm braces, and I'm going to be putting the 39.5 in the front and the 45.7 in the rear here. And those are going to take the M3 by 10 screws, so the slightly longer screws. So we're just going to need 4 of those. Okay guys, and right here on the setup sheet for the Pro driver, that set has a setup sheet. It is a stock 45.7mm block, so I am going to use this one. These are directional, so make sure that you have the holes facing to the rear. Okay guys, you want to get the 39.5 and put it on the front. Okay guys, it should look a little bit like that. 39.5 in the front with the holes facing forward, and same thing on the rear with the 45.7. Alright guys, the next part is the chassis brace. I'm going to take this off the tree here. Okay guys, for these long screws, I'm finding that the ES120 and the WOW stick are just not torquey enough to get these screws down in. I'm resorting to my old faithful, which is my drill. And this has a very low torque setting, so I will not strip out these screws, but you have to make sure not to go too fast, because if you go too fast, it generates heat, and it can actually melt the plastic that you're screwing it into. So even though this can go really fast, you want to make sure that you don't go too fast, because it will, like I said, it can damage your parts. So just a real slow setting. I'm barely pulling the trigger, and when you see it getting pretty close, you're going to start to slow down with your finger. This drill has a really nice slow setting to it. So we have our battery chassis bracer, so I'm just going to make sure I hand tighten this to the desired tightness, just tight enough, so it's going to look about like that to start with. Okay. Now we're looking at doing our side 3x8 flat screw on these side rails here, and it looks like this has a little edge right here that's going to protect the chassis. Let's take a look here. So it's going to go right like that, and what a nice fit that is. This is going to be the M3x8 screws, which are these little guys right here. Okay guys, we're at the end of page 4, which is your first steps, and it should look just like this. We've got the 2 suspension arm mounts, we've got the 2 side rails. Alright guys, we're going right into bag 2, which has a lot of these ball ends and also your steering components. We're going to pull these out. Alright, we're going to have some ball ends that we're going to need to be using here in this plastic bag here. We're going to be using these linkages to make some of your steering ball linkages, and we're going to need a caliper to make sure that we get the proper size. Okay guys, so we need to make 2 rods, one that is 34mm long and one that is 50.5mm. Okay, that's exactly 34mm, so we're going to go ahead and make the 2 50mm ones now. Okay guys, I have all my linkages made up here, so the next thing is going to be the steering linkages here, and you want to make sure that you pay attention to the direction of this part. Make sure it's not leaning like this, and also you want to make sure you get the ball links in the proper spot. So all I'm going to do now is take one of these ball links. I'm going to put it in this hole here, the one on my right side. We're going to go and insert our bearings into the steering components here, just popping them in the top and the bottom here. There's 2 for this one and 2 for this one. And there are 2 black posts that are going to come up underneath the steering. So if you can see, this is just like this is just like that, and this is going to come up from the bottom. Anytime you're screwing metal into metal, I highly suggest you put Loctite, which is what I'm going to do right here. We have these cap head screws, which are M3 by 5. Now with this red Loctite, I just get the smallest amount and I just work it in like chapstick here. So it's going to go right through this part and screw into the black bulkhead here. The black shaft, I should say. It's going to hold the bottom here and just snug it down just ever so slightly. Make sure that it's got nice free range of motion there. I really like the chapstick style Loctite because it's non-messy. You just barely get a little bit on the threads and it doesn't go everywhere where you don't want it to go. Now when you're using Loctite, make sure you're not touching the plastic at all, because Loctite makes plastic instantly get brittle and break. So you want to make sure you don't get your Loctite anywhere. Okay, this is the finished two pieces from what we just did there. We just inserted the steering pivots and make sure that they are pivoting around nice and freely. They should with no problems. So let's put these down and see what we have to do next. We're going to take the steering brace here in this position here. Now the stock hole where you put the ball link is usually right here. I'm going to be using this hole right here. That's just my preference. And that is the preference of the Pro sheet setup as well. Okay guys, so you're going to be attaching your 50.5 millimeter lengths to this steering rack here. Just going to push it down in real firmly. There we go. Do one on each side. Alright, and we're also going to take the 40 millimeter and we're going to attach it to this ball link that we put into the steering linkages here. So. Okay guys, this is bag number 4, and if you just were seeing what I was doing a little while ago, I was fiddling around with the differential, and this is something I wasn't sure if it had oil in it or not, and it comes to find out that it does not have oil in it. It's just fully built for you, which is really a nice touch. So you just pull these 4 screws, you take your 10,000 weight oil here, you fill it up, pop the top back on, and screw it back together, and it is nice and sealed and nice and gooey here. That's gonna help with your differential duties here. So we are to the point where we're going to be putting the sides of the transmission together. There's a lot of idler gears, some little posts in here that we're going to do. Now, taking the good with the bad here, guys, I'm going to take a look at the side of my transmission. Where did it go? Here it is. And how do you guys like this camera angle? I think I like it a whole lot better. So I'm going to move my microphone in just a little bit more so we have some tracking of my voice here. Okay, so this transmission case, I'm not really happy with this right here as I'm holding everything together. I know this is a thinner part of the case here, but I'm going to take kind of the good with the bad. You know, I'm a big fan of Yokomo, but I'm not really happy with how I have to flex this together to get it to seat. I'm sure when the bolts go together, everything's going to line up fine, but I just thought that was just a little quirk that I saw there. So we're going to go ahead and put this together. We've got my spur gear idler and the spur gear holder in this bag. We've got the motor mount. We'll set that aside. We have our bearings here, all the internal parts that we're going to need right now, and some screws, and some other screws, and a pinion, and some different posts here. So I'm not really sure how this is going to work out, so we're going to find out together. Alright, let me take some of these other extra parts out of this tray here, and we'll add some things to the tray. So guys, I got this tray on Banggood. It is made by Relac, and it's intended for quadcopters, but it does the job for RC cars just fine. So I'm going to go ahead and place these different bags into different areas here for the screws. Okay, so we're going to take a bearing, small, place it over this shaft here and into this guy right here. I think I forgot to put the bearing on this side of this shaft when I when I put everything back together, which is kind of funny. So I had to open it back up. I'm like, where did this extra bearing come from? All right, guys. So so that's number one. We have two metal shafts that we're going to place here and here. We're going to place two bearings on either side of these gears right here, which are going to go here and here, I believe. So let's go ahead and do that. These are nylon gears, and the nylon gears are really nice because they do not, you know, get chewed up like a metal gear will. These tend to last and last and last. Okay, so we have the two gears there. That one's going to, two bearings there, I should say. That one's going to go there. So these are the same exact size. It doesn't matter which one you put them onto. At least that's been my experience in RC cars with this type of a transmission. That shouldn't even really call it a transmission, it's more like a gear. Okay, so we have this like that. This is exactly how you need it, and I will be putting a bearing on the other side of this. Like I said, I messed up last time. Let me get the gonna get the differential now. I'm gonna put a bearing on either side of this. This is gonna be a tight fit here, I believe. Yep, it's pretty tight. And put this one on here. Alright, so it doesn't really matter which way that goes in. Let's just see here. So they have the screws facing outward in the instructions. If you look right down here, it's going to be hard for you guys to see, but it's going to place that in just like that, and it's going to rotate really nice. And it does. There's like zero, I should say friction, but I don't feel any hard spots of this coming through. They do not recommend putting on any oil in through here. That tends to just make everything nasty and bad. And the inside, and I believe these gears, a lot of times they are lubrication impregnated. So here's the bearing I forgot last time, so make sure you guys don't forget that one as we put the two halves of the carcass together here. We're going to place the other side in, and I think we're going to, the next step is going to be putting some screws in, and we shall do that next. I'm just going to line everything up, squish it together. Okay guys, we are at page 8, and this is placing the screws into the gearbox. So it looks like we have some M3x12s right there, and it shows here to use the marked holes for mounting the motor plate onto the motor mount there. So I'm sure this is the spot where you would actually these are the screws here that you actually use to change the angle of the motor if you wish to. So it's basically going to weight the motor in either forward or backwards for your weight preferences. So let me grab one screw, which is the M3x12. Alright, let's go ahead and put this one in. It says to start this one here. Alright, so I'm going to go back with my 2mm here. Just going to make sure that everything is tight to their specifications. It's usually just finger tight to where the button head just barely abuts up against the housing here. Alright, everything is good. You don't want to over tighten things because you can strip things out, but this is pretty high quality plastic that they use for this. It's pretty neat. Other thing you want to do is just make sure you spin it to make sure that everything spins nice and freely, and it does feel nice and free there. So let me put this aside. So like I said, I always hold things the way it is in the instructions. The motor, the transmission, the gearbox is like this, and we have lots and lots of different positions to place this motor mount. It shows to go in the furthest back to make the weight as far back as possible. You can change this. As you guys can see, there's 3 holes here. It's going to go on the 3rd hole of all 3 of these, all 4 of these motor mount places here. So it's going to go here, it's going to go here, and one more. It's going to go here. So, okay guys, that is it for the motor mount. Now we're going to be placing the spur gear along with the spur gear holder, and it's going to take some of these M3x6 screws. There's 4 of them that hold on the spur. So let's put this down here, and we have this bag that has the spur gear, so let's open this up. Let's see here. So we have these swirly things going this way and not that way, so not that it makes a difference, but I'm going to go ahead and place this here behind. And I'm going to line up the screw hole. There we go. And we've got 4 of these M3x6 screws that are going to go into these holes. Now this is actually going into metal as well, although I don't think I've ever used a Loctite on this one here. It's being held so firmly, I don't think it really needs it. Okay guys, we're going to take this little pin here, place it through the axle here, and then place the spur gear on top of this little pin here. There we go. There is inside of here a grub screw spot. Can you guys see that right there? So we're going to put a grub screw in there. We have that. Use a 1.5 millimeter screw grub to put in there, and you're also, this is going metal into metal, and this one you definitely will need some Loctite. Now, even though we're putting Loctite on this grub screw, we're just going to put the tiniest amount here. Just going to wipe off the majority of it, because we do want to be able to take this off if we do need to. Yes, there's a flat spot on both sides. Whew, good. Okay, so we're going to even this up one more time. Place this bad boy on here, and make sure that this is seated all the way on. And let's go ahead and put this grub screw back in. Alright, here we go. Alright, and that grub screw is going to grab right onto that flat spot of that shaft right there. We have our motor mount done, and at this point in the instructions it shows you to be putting the motor into the system right now. I'm not going to do that right now because I'm going to build the whole entire car, then put my electronics into it. But we are going to place the transmission, or the gearbox I should say, onto the frame, and it looks like we're going to be using these M3x10 should be these guys right here, these flathead or the flush mount screws right into the chassis there. So it looks like there's exactly 6, which is on the bottom of this, and let's go ahead and place this on, shall we? This is going to be so strange to have that. There's actually a little cutout in the chassis to make sure that the spur gear doesn't hit. That's crazy how low that is. Wow. Okay, so anyway, let's go ahead and start bolting this on. Okay guys, the next step here is I'm just going to be placing these 2 items here with the plate stopper and also the battery plate, and there's going to be this little pin that goes on the top, which is in the bag ready to go, which is this thing right here. On the tree here we have this little guy here. We're going to take this off, and I also need the battery thing here. As always, going to take off all these little rough spots from where it is attached to the tree. It's going to go straight down on the top, just like this. Very easy. This thing spins around and very nice. Cool. Has a little tiny bit of resistance to it, so it's not flopping around. Good. And take that out. Oh, it's stuck. Alright, so what is keeping this thing together? It looks like it's probably this pin, and it is. The plate pin is going to go through this direction. Plate pin looks like this. So it's just going to go in like this. There's a little recessed area that's going to be up and not like that. So just like this. Place that in, and let's get our 2mm here. If it is a 2mm, let's hope that it is. Yay. I love this battery keeper. It's so awesome. You can flip this to either direction here, and no more flipping in those little battery holder things that always would move and wouldn't be good. So alright, that is that. Let's move on to the next step. Okay everyone, page number 10 is all about using the servo saver, which I never use a servo saver, so I'm going to be skipping this step. If you guys use a servo saver, follow this guide here. It's not something I ever want to do, so here we go. This is going to be bag number 6, the contents. This is the front bulkhead that's going to be engaging with the shock system and the upper arm area, so let's go ahead and get out bag number 6. Okay guys, in this step, bag number 6 just contains these screws here, which I'm going to be dumping out into my little tray here. The other thing it's going to be using is, if you look in the lower left hand corner of the instructions, it says remaining parts from bag 2, which is this tree here, so we're going to use that as well. And these are remaining parts from bag 1, these guys here, which are the upper bulkheads for the front here. So remaining parts from bag 1, contents 1. So we're going to use these two things and that little thing right there, which is I have over here in a tray. So let's go ahead and take a look at how do we do this. Okay, so we need to make some turnbuckles. It says up here we're going to make 2 that are 60mm long, if you look right up here. So that's going to take the 33mm turnbuckle, which are the only 2 that come in this portion of the kit. So I'm guessing that these are the 33, but I like to check. So that is going to be a 33mm. Yep, that's going to be 33mm, and the total length of this is going to be exactly 60mm. So I'm going to bump this up here to 60. Okay guys, so we're going to have these 2 ball ends here, which this is the one that goes on the cap for the turnbuckle on the end, and so we need the standard one, which is going to be one of these. For the other sides we need 2 of these. We're going to make 2 rods, so 2 of these and 2 of the other ends. Okay guys, so I have my links that I was told to build for 60mm long. Those are there. It has one of the cap ends and one of the open ends that is going to be attaching to your control surfaces. Alright, so we have these 2 pieces right here, which are going to be screwed together by the M10 button heads. Keep in mind that there's a flat side here and a bumpy side here. Keep that flat side towards the front. Then this locks in like this. Keep in mind that there is kind of the more open holes here and the more closed holes towards the back here. So there is a big difference between the front and back in this situation here. So we're going to place these in. Then we're going to be attaching these guys here in just a moment. There's a right and a left. If you guys look inside here, this says left, and the other one obviously says right. Okay guys, as this is placed here, your one that has the right, which has R on it, is going to go on this side here. It's going to go right about like that. Get another 10mm screw here, put it in, and we'll get this attached. There we go. This is says right on it because this is going to be the right side of the chassis. It's going to go right about here, I believe, somewhere about there. Now, according to this addendum here, which is added to the instructions, we need to add these little spacers underneath the back side of the these little guys right here. So I do have those over here in my extra parts trays right there. So we will keep that in mind as we put this together. Okay guys, my apologies. I went ahead and bolted this bulkhead down into the frame, and I forgot to have the camera on. So basically we have 10mm and 17mm here that go, 18mm that go in here. You want to make sure you have these special spacers that they have that go onto this portion of the bulkhead. Okay guys, it's time in the video here to install this very nice aluminum chamfered shock tower. In the instructions here it does say to use the outside most hole there. I'm going to go off of the setup sheet from the YD2 from the Pro. I'm going to use this more inside one over here. I might change that later on down the road, but we're also going to be doing the the rear shock tower as well, and installing all of these. So there is a front and a back to this. You can see that there's a bit of a raised portion here that's been milled. That we're going to put that forward as we place the shock mounts on this side of the bulkhead here. So let's take a look at what we need. We're going to need an M10, and I'm going to put this in the lower right here. So this is where I'm going to be placing this. So this is going to be non-stock for you guys out there. This is the shock ball end right here. It's going to just thread right on, and I'm going to need some thread locker on this as well, since we are going metal to metal. So I'm just going to take the littlest amount here. If you have survived on this video until this point, congratulations. It is a long video. This is a full build of a car, and building cars is not a fast thing at all. There's a lot of attention that goes into it, so I appreciate it if you are watching with me right now. It's gonna go right here, and it is a beautiful thing there. Nice 10mm. Okay guys, we're going to turn our attention to this rear carbon fiber mount. Now obviously this has no front or back to it, which is really nice. You don't have to worry about that. We are going to be placing some screws that which is very similar to what we just did, and also these ball ends, which are going to be locked in place by these nylon lock nuts here. Then we'll be placing these 60mm links that we just made a little while ago. It shows the mounting positions right here, but like again, I'm gonna go off the tune sheet from the other driver. We'll see how different they are in comparison. If I don't like them, I'll go ahead and change them as well. You should have a part that looks about like this. You can set up your shock positions wherever you want. These are the spots that I'm going to start with, and like I said, I might change ball links. Now, one thing you should know, anytime you're putting on these links here, you see this little bit of a line on the turnbuckle here. You should always have that line facing the same direction on both sides, because that determines which direction you're going to turn it when you are tightening. So when we have this on here, let's see. I actually did this one opposite, so I really should have turned these aside. So I messed up because now if I want to tighten one, I have to kind of make this one go down, and this one has to go up, so it's going to be a little bit different. So I'm going to actually switch one of these around right now and remeasure it, so that I'm just going to keep the ball heads the way they are, but I'm going to swap the links to where that we have the line on the same side on both sides. Okay guys, I got my links sorted out here. So as you guys can see, each link has a different ball on either end, but now we have the line on the turnbuckle going the same direction. That means if I'm going to tune one and I'm going to turn the turnbuckle one direction, I'm going to be able to do the same thing on the other side, so it won't be reversed. Okay, let's go ahead and snap these closed ball links onto the bulkhead here. Let's see if I can get this on without I messed myself up. And these are the links that are sized at 60 millimeters. There we go. So it's going to go like this. Now we're going to bolt this to the bulkhead. And that's going to take 4 M3x10 screws. Really nice. So we only have 4 more screws left in our tray here, so it looks like we're doing a good job. We're not forgetting any screws or anything like that. It's nice to know that this shark tower will come off very, very easily in case we want to do some adjustments. Just a Okay guys, we're into bag 7 here. Let me just show you everything that's in here. We have our front lower A-arms with the spacers. We have our front upper A-arms with the spacers. Some turnbuckles. Some extra hardware here. Some grub screws. And also these are the pins that go through the A-arms so to allow them to pivot. So let me go ahead and take all this stuff out here. So the first thing the instructions show is making your upper A-arm, and we're going to make it exactly 58.5 millimeters. Okay, so we'll assemble both of these. And once again, we're going to want to make sure that the lines are both on the same, going the same direction. So we have them like this. This is exactly how we want them. We do not want it a mirror image just like this, because when you tighten one side one direction, you have to tighten the other side the opposite direction. So we're going to turn this like this. It's going to go on basically like that. So we have the line facing one direction. So that looks like 58.5 right there, pretty darn close. So we're going to make the other one, and I'll be back with you in a sec. Here's now we're going to use the smaller of the 2 rods, this one here, I'm going to put the other one down, to insert in through the front of the bulkhead and through the upper A-arm with the 2 spacers on either side. You pass that on through, and then we are going to use these 2 small screws to secure that into place. So let me go ahead and do that. Okay, so we're going to take the spacers that come on the same tree as the upper A-arms, pass it through a little bit here, pop it on, put my upper A-arm through. You guys can't see that, can you? Alright, let's pass this all the way through, and we should just get a little bit of it sticking out there. I'm going to put the secondary spacer in there, and I need some tweezers. Hang on. Okay guys, so I just opened up this package of really nice tweezers. It comes in a pack. I'll put a link in the description down below for these as well, but this is great for getting into really tight spaces. I'm actually glad I got these. They were fairly cheap and nice to have here. So I'm just going to place that in, pass the rod through, and now it's in. So now we have an upper A-arm here. So let's just take a closer look at that. So you can see I have both of the spacers in place. You can hardly see this one because it's so deep in there, but the spacer's here and the other one's here. Sorry for the shaky camera. And now we're going to put a securing bolt right in the front here. It's going to prevent this pin from popping out. So we have this really, really tiny screw, and this is going to go in the front of the bulkhead here, right into here. Then again, it might be nice to actually have some Loctite in there, but I can always add that later. Okay, let's. I'm just going to do the other side, guys. I don't need to really film that one, so here we go. Alright guys, we have 2 upper A-arms, and they are nice and free flowing here. There's no binding issues at all, so that's what you want to make sure that you have. Okay, so we are going to start to build the lower A-arms. The lower A-arms look just like this. We're going to add a ball stud to the front of it for the shock position. This is the M3x6 set screw. That's going to hold this assembly in place right here. So you're going to screw this all the way onto this. It doesn't show the threads here, but there's threads there. And then we're going to make this to 61.5 millimeters exactly. So we're going to go ahead and make 2 of these. I'll make one and I'll do the other one off camera. So these are the same exact lower A-arms that the EX and the standard Yokomo YD2 has. So we're just going to make sure we take off some of this flashing here, get both of them out, And in your parts area, we should have these two guys. And we're going to screw these on all the way. Do not leave these unscrewed at all. Okay, when you guys screw this down, make sure you have it screwed all the way down. If it goes just a little bit further than this, if it's kind of lined up like this, you can see that this actually has a flat spot on it. You want that flat spot to line up with these hashtag marks right here. So we're just going to turn this back just a tiny bit. We'll make the other one the exact same way. Okay guys, so we're going to assemble one of the A-arms here. And what you're going to do is, you can see the spot where the grub screw is going to go into. That obviously has to mate with the flat spot of this adjustment spot right here. So the thing is that you want to put this grub screw in here that's going to help to keep this end here at the proper adjustment length. Just going to screw this in a little bit, and we're going to see how long this needs to be. It says 16 millimeters on the setup sheet over here. Let's see what it says here. So it's going to be, it says 16 millimeters from the here to here. So let's see what this is right now. But on the instructions it says 61.5. So let's see where we're at right now. We're at 67. So this needs to go in. And I believe stock is actually just at the first hash mark here. So let's see if we're right about there. So it says 63. Go to the first mark here, and now we're at 62. Gonna go in a little bit further. Now we are at 61.5. 61.5 is perfect for the stock setup, and I'm going to go ahead and tighten this down. Like I said, there's a little bit of a caveat here. You want to tighten this down to where it's snug. It's going to hold this bit in place here. But you don't want it too tight to where you're going to start to unthread this little channel right here. So just take it down until you start to feel a little bit of resistance, and then stop. Okay, so here we go, and let's go ahead and make the other one. Okay, so I have both of my front A-arms built here. These are the lower A-arms. We're going to be installing these in just a moment. I believe we need a 39.5. That's going to be capturing the front end of this. So let me get the tree here, see if we have a 39.5 from bag 1. It's this one right here, so take this guy off of here. Alright, so we have 39.5. We have our axles here. On the end of the axles, we're going to have these little caps that are going to go on here. There's a slide right on, and this is going to allow us to fit these into the acceptance holes of the other A-arm catcher right. Okay, so we're going to be placing these on now. What you want to do is place the axle through. You can have these little squishy ends here, along with a spacer on either side. So I'm going to go ahead and put on the spacers on either side. So I'm going to place the spacer on either side, along with these little end caps here, with the bulbous end sticking out towards the bulkhead here. So it's going to look exactly like this. And now we're going to slide this in, and we want the ball link facing forward, and this should look like this, and it should not look like that. It's going to basically do that. So it's going to slide in just like that, and then our front 39.5 here is going to hold that into place. So I'm going to get the other side going, and we'll place this all together. Alright guys, this is where a little bit of the hard portion comes in. We have to hold everything together. So I'm placing the other lower A-arm in, and I'm going to capture everything, the two ends, with this 39.5 here. There we go. And now we need some cap head screws, some M10 by, not cap head, excuse me, we're going to have some of the countersunk screws here to hold this all in place. Just 2 of them by 10 should be right here. Okay guys, so we have our lower A-arms placed here, and the one thing I'm noticing here is I'm getting a little bit of binding, not binding, but it's just a little stiff. This doesn't fall down on its own, as you can see here. This one a little bit more free, but I'm gonna kind of loosen everything up and then kind of stretch things away from each other just to make sure that this is gonna be reacting correctly. This is how they should be right here. So I might have had it tightened down just a little bit too much. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just hand tighten these guys. I'm going to kind of make sure that they are seated as far away from each other as they can, because that could make a difference here. So I tighten those down a little bit. This one's a little bit sticky here, so I'm just going to unscrew this one just a tiny bit. So that looks good. I'm going to tighten this one just a little bit. It's a little sticky there. Tighten that one a little bit sticky, but not bad. This is going to affect your suspension if you're not careful, though. Unscrew these just a tiny bit. There we go. There we go. That's what we want right there. Okay, very good. Hey everyone, it's the next day and we're on to bag number 8. Now bag number 8 is going to contain the front knuckles and the rear knuckles as well, so I'm going to pop these guys out of here. There's a lot of hardware in these bags as well as the rear dog bones, and I believe I have another piece here inside the box, one of the rear pieces here. Yep, no front. Alright, so I am kind of struggling to get my microphone kind of out of the shot, so I'm just going to leave it right there so we have decent audio. So here we go. We're going to be building the upper knuckles here. We're going to be building these front knuckles here, I should say. Going to go through the full assembly here and the different spots for mounting. This is all stock mounting positions, which I am going to use. After that, we're going to go ahead and snap it right onto the car. So let's go ahead and get started with this. And we shall take our parts and whatnot and place them into our handy dandy tray here, and other parts here. These are the steering stoppers, which help the steering not go quite as far as it should. I'm going to set these aside because I'm not going to use those initially unless I need to. I'm going to pour this stuff out here. It's always good to kind of lay out all of your screws and everything, find out what you have, and so that you also make sure that you weren't shorted from the factory for some sort of part. Now I've made 3 Yokomo kits right now, and I've never had a problem with anything go missing. Okay, as far as these drive shafts go, these have been fantastic for me. What I always do with all of my drive shafts is I pull out let's see if I can get this to focus. I pull out the grub screw, which is right in here, and I always put a little bit of thread locker on that grub screw, because if that grub screw comes out, you are in a world of hurt. So you actually don't even have to take the whole thing apart. So you're going to see how tight these are in here. Alright, and these are actually quite well in there, so I would definitely think that these would never really come out. See, is there any thread locker on there? There's not, so that's a good thing that we're going to do this. And once again, just take the smallest amount of thread locker that you can. It really doesn't require hardly anything. And we're going to put this right back in. Nice and snug. There we go, just slightly snug it down. That way I know from the beginning that I will never lose these grub screws out on the track somewhere. Alright, so let me go ahead and hold this the way it is in the picture, which is going to be this one here. We're going to be doing a mirror image of that as well. It's going to shave off the stuff from the tree again. Good. Okay, so go ahead and take the larger of the 2 balls here. We're going to put this down in here. Easy stuff to get down in here. One on top, one on bottom. The one on the bottom is going to go into the center hole. It's going to look just like this, and we're going to take one of the smaller ball links and put it into the furthest hole back, which is going to be, as you can see the 3 holes, this one right here. Okay, you guys will see in your bag that you do have some bearings as well. I'm going to hold this the same way it is in the instructions. I'm going to insert my bearings into either side here. They just slide right in. They're a pretty decent fit, and I'm going to get my front axle and go ahead and put it through. Now at this point they tell you to put the pin through and also your hub. You can either do that or save it to the end. I always say just save that to the end because you don't want the hub falling off and the pins going missing. So it's always a pain to go find those pins somewhere. So this is finished right now. Go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording here, and you guys can build the other side, and I will join you guys in a second. Time to snap this knuckle onto the car. There's the top and bottom, which are going to go here and here, and then the control arm for your steering, which is going to be right here. Now with these you can actually just snap them on by pressing them on, and the steering one you might need to use the pliers, but keep in mind that if you do use the pliers, that sometimes it can scrape the top of the plastic, but it's not a big deal, so I do it all the time. There we go. Push this down as hard as I can here. There we go. So we have our suspension linkage here. Look at that. Pretty cool. And here I'm just going to use my pliers here. Make this a little bit easier myself. Just pop that right in. Now we have some steering. So that's pretty cool. Let's go ahead and do the other side. Okay guys, we're to page 16, and this is going to be the rear drive assembly here for the A-arms and whatnot. So we're going to grab these guys right here. We're going to put a ball link in the top of this one as well. It's going to be the stock position is going to be the center hole on this lower honeycomb here with a row of 3. It's going to be the center one here. So we shall place this one on. Alright guys, it looks like we're going to need bag number 9 as well. We're going to go ahead and put these bearings in first. Smaller one on the outside, larger one on the inside here. And make sure that wants to seat down all the way. And of course this drive shaft is going to come right through like this. Alright guys, we're going to get the contents of bag number 9 now. 9 is going to contain your rear A-arms and also some shafts that are going to be allowing these A-arms to go up and down. I'm going to go ahead and put these screws and ball ends into the dish of destiny over here. I'm going to have the 3 holes towards this side here, and it looks like I need the shorter shaft, not the longer one that I said. So I'm going to go ahead and pass this through here. And we're going to put a ball link in the very center of these 3 holes here, and also a small screw that's going to help tighten this up, and it prevents that rod from coming out. There we go. And let's get this ball link in there, which is a 2mm here. This is where your shock is going to be actually attached into. So this will be the left rear assembly here. So let's go ahead and do the right rear. Okay guys, the next page, which is 17, we're going to be placing the rear A-arms onto the chassis, much in the same fashion that we did the front ones. We're going to use the 47.2mm spacer for the rear, and we are going to get going right now. So this is something a little bit different in these instructions compared to the stock YD2, is that they actually put 2 of the spacers at the rear and no spacers in the front, which is a different setup than what we are normally used to. So make sure you make that note. So 47.2. Here we have the 47.2. So what you're going to need is your 4 spacers, your 2 rods, and your suspension arms here. Alright, so we're going to pass the rod through, just like this. I'm going to put the rod head on here. It's a very tight fit, so you want to make sure you get it in the right spot. I'm going to put 2 spacers in the back. Like I said, this is different from the YD2 standard, and then we're going to put this end on here as well. There we go. So we basically have an assembly that looks like that, and this is going to lay into the frame. We already have a A-arm keeper there, so we're just going to place that right there. As we snap all this together, we're going to make sure that we put the dog bone into the side of the differential. Okay. This is quite a hard step because you're doing a bunch of things all at one time. You got to keep the arms in place. Okay, so I'm just going to show you guys what I'm going to do here before I do it. So I have the drive shaft dog bone into the side of the differential here, and I have everything kind of just held into place right here. I'm going to go ahead and snap on my ball link right here. Oh, I think I put these ball links on the wrong side. Did I do that? Yep, I did. Alright guys, so I placed these 2 ball links on the wrong side that should be on the other side of the carbon. It just looked wrong when I was trying to hook this up, so I'm going to stop here. I'm going to go ahead and correct that, and we'll get back with you in just a second. Okay guys, before we were so rudely interrupted by my mistake there, like I was saying, let's just go ahead and place this arm in place. We'll put the drive shaft in the outer cup of the differential, and I'm going to go ahead and snap this ball link down on so that it kind of holds everything together with one more little point of contact. That way we just have to worry about putting in the rear keeper here. Now these linkages here for the rear, I'm using a non-standard position, so most likely the measurement that we took from the beginning is not going to work for this setup here. So I'm going to have to change the length of those. I think the camber is going to be off from where we normally do it. Okay, so I need a 10mm screw to go up into here, and 3x10. I'm going to move these holes into position here. Okay guys, so I have this rear A-arm keeper in place right now, and you can see that it's got a little bit of a binding to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to loosen these up by like a little 1/4 and 1/2 turns until I think it's actually not going to be binding anymore. So let's see if that works here. A little better. I'm going to loosen up the front ones as well. Let's see. Actually, I did loosen that, so let's make sure that these are not too loose. You can actually take these arms and bend them back and forth a little bit. Oopsie, there goes my, that's from the front end, sorry about that. So I'm just going to take these and torque them a little bit, and we do have some free movement now, much better. So make sure you don't torque these down too tight. I did the same thing in the front, as you guys will remember here, so you want to make sure that these are going up and down freely here. Okay guys, just one other note, that in the instructions it does say to grease the universal drive shafts here, right here at the collar here. I'm going to do that, but I'm going to do it at the very end once I get everything lined up and everything the way I want it to. Okay guys, okay everyone, the next step is going to be installing your shocks. And alright everyone, the next step in the process is building your big bore shocks. I'm going to be building one of these for you guys, and then you guys can do the other 3 on your own. I do have an aftermarket part for this, which is called the blue O-rings. I'm going to show you that right now. Okay guys, so this is the big bore shock high grade blue P3 O-ring. The reason I use these is they have a lot less stiction in the shaft for your shocks. This is part 380. It's a really inexpensive upgrade. It's like $3 or $4. I highly recommend it. It's one of the least expensive, highest upgrades that you can do for your big bore shock. Bag 10. Alright. These are all the shock caps that you're going to use. Some of you'll see that there's size differences, larger and longer These longer shock caps on the top and shorter. I believe the shorter ones go in the front. You can use the longer ones in the back, depending on the type of shock that you're using. So we'll see what the shock manual says here. So we have all the shock heads and the bottoms here. We have all of our shock tops here, the shock bottoms. So let's go ahead and line all these up here. Bottoms and tops and bottoms. And we also have your pink diaphragms. These go in the top of the shock after you place your oil into the shock. Now it's actually preferable to leave your shocks overnight so all the bubbles get out of the oil. We can do that as well. I'm not going to take that much time building these shocks. I can always go back and finish that later on. So we are not going to use these clear O-rings, but we do need these little black keepers for the O-rings, so I'm going to take these out and get these ready as well. So I'm just going to pour these guys out in my hand. So we have the 4 ones that we're not going to use, and I can feel the difference between these. These ones are quite stiff and hard, and when I take a look at these, they're much softer and just much more pliable. So we'll have those. We have our springs, the pink and the green, I believe. I'll have to read in just a moment which ones are which for front and rear. I forget at the moment. And we have our shock shafts and also the pistons here, and some O-rings. Now the O-rings are always a pain in the butt to put on without shooting them across the room. I'm hoping they have a couple extra in here because I usually do shoot them across the room. If you have a fear of losing those O-rings that you have, and I think that they do actually give you a few extras. This is the little pack of E-rings that they give you. I think I said O-rings earlier, but these are the E-rings, excuse me, that we use to hold the shock piston tops on, which are these guys right here. So here we have the 4 pistons, and we also have the shock shaft right here. So let's go ahead and get started. Alright, also guys, this is the shock body here. You're going to have the lower retaining collar here. There's a different shaped one for front and rear. This is I believe the rear. These are the little rings that allow you to preload to your shock as well. There should be some O-rings in here. Yep. Here are some O-rings as well. We're going to use these O-rings in just a moment. I'll show you what those are for in just a second. But let's go ahead and get all these parts out and on the table. First thing we're going to do is take the shock shaft and add one of the E-rings on the bottom. First thing we're going to do is take a snap E-ring and put it on the lower portion of those 2 recesses right there. Make sure you have good control of what you're doing here. One of the best ways of doing this actually is to grab the back of the E-ring like this and push it on with a pliers. Let me see if I've got a good set of pliers here. Okay guys, I have a nice pliers here, and I'm going to place this E-ring right onto the shaft, kind of like this, and I'm going to slide that on by squeezing it, and you'll see that it goes right on like this. I'm going to go ahead and place one of the pistons on the top here, and we're going to do the same thing with a new E-ring here. What you want to do is get those little teeth right underneath the top of that head there. I just did that off camera. I'll do another one for you guys here in just a second. But basically, I was able to squish that on by taking the pliers and pushing it on just like that. Alright, so we have our shaft made here. So next we have our shock preload spring, and it requires us to put a little O-ring in the very inside of this. So inside here there is a recess for this O-ring to go into, and it's such a pain to get these things in there. It's one of my least favorite things to do, so I'm going to try and get this guy in here. Okay, so we have one done here. So wasn't as bad as I thought, but boy, I had this little tiny tweezers that really helped out. So I'm going to go ahead and slide this onto the shock body here that we're going to use. It's going to start to screw this in here. And what that little O-ring does is it gives the shock body here a little bit of resistance as you are dialing in your shock preload. Okay guys, so I'm going to be using 200 weight oil in all the shocks. This kit comes with 200 and 300. They want 300 in the front and 200 in the rear. I'm going to go ahead and put 200 in all the way around. It's something I've been wanting to try with my other car. I have 150 weight in that car, and everything is really nice and active, but I'm going to try the 200 weight, which is just 50 pounds more, in all the shocks here. I'm hoping that I have enough for all 4 shocks. I think that I do. But we're going to go ahead and get started here building this shock. I like to put on gloves while I wear this, so I'm going to do that. Okay, so the instructions show to use all 4 short caps. I'm going to make 2 with the short caps and 2 with the long caps, just to give myself a little bit of leg room, because I think I'm going to be upgrading the lower A-arms. I'll go ahead and make these longer shocks to start with. We're going to want the top cap, the bottom cap, the O-ring retaining screw, your piston, and the shock body that has the compression ring available with it. And I'm going to go ahead and take apart my my blue O-rings here. We're just going to need 4. It comes with 8, so you can do 2 sets of shocks with 1 kit, so that makes it even better. I'm just going to use a tiny dab of oil in the bottom of the shock here, and since I'm not going to use this 300, I'm just going to use a little drop of the 300 just to help lubricate things. I'm going to go ahead and place the shaft through the main shock body here. I'm going to also get a little bit of shock oil on the O-ring. Because we're going to be passing these threads through the O-ring, we want to make sure that we're not going to scrape anything at all. So just very gently place this O-ring over the threads, and you can see that you can get through it pretty easily here. Now the next thing is the O-ring retainer bit here, and you'll see that it has a flat side on one side and a stepped raised area underneath it, and you want the raised area to be facing downwards, so this top flat part is going to kind of compress this O-ring right into place here. So I'm just going to place this over so that, like I said, that little stepped area is going to be right facing down. And I'm also going to put a little bit of oil on these threads down here, just to get everything oiled up really nice. You want to make sure that as you're screwing everything together that it's not going to be binding that little O-ring in the inside there. So that's packed in there, and let's go ahead and place this on. This is the lower shock cap, which is the smaller of the 2. I always reverse thread these for just a second until I feel it kind of click, and then I start to screw it on. That way you don't cross thread anything. Cross threading is when you do bad things to the threads by not getting it lined up properly. Okay, so we have that cinched down really nicely. We don't have to be super tight with it. I'm just going to make sure that it's... Okay, we have 4 shock ends here. I'm guessing that the shorter of the 2 are going to be for the front and the longer of the 2 are going to be for the back. It doesn't actually give any distinction in the instructions which are which, so I'm going to use the long ones for the rear because that's typically what happens. This is going to sound a little weird, but you can actually hold the shock shaft with a wire cutter very easily and not damage anything, because what we're going to do is we're going to use the wire cutter right on the threads, and we're not using that on the shaft. If you use it on the shaft, you're going to damage something. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place the shock end on here. Just going to screw it on here until it gets right about at the pliers here, and I'm going to leave a little bit of thread left over there. Once again, I'm not grabbing the shaft, I'm just grabbing where the threads are. And typically what I've seen is that you want to leave a little bit of the threads left over there. When it goes up into the shock, it's actually not going to be affecting the O-ring whatsoever. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to take our 200 and we're going to go ahead and fill up the shock with the piston all the way down. And once we get it almost all the way full, we're going to raise the piston up so it'll release any air bubbles that are down underneath that shock head. Now I know there are some devices that will help take the air out of the shocks. I don't have one of those, so I might be getting one of those in the future, and I could always review it. Alright, so you're going to take a look in the inside of the shock. I'm just going to press the plunger up a little bit. I'm going to pull it back down, and you'll start to see some air bubbles start to come out. You can see that right there. Just going to go up and down a few times and make sure that we don't have any air bubbles underneath that. The goal is to get this diaphragm slid across the top of the shock without letting any air bubbles get underneath it, and then very, very, very carefully placing the shock cap on the top of the shock and getting it screwed down. Also not getting any of the diaphragm caught in the threads and all that good stuff. So it is quite tough to do, but done it a few times. Sometimes you have to go back and do it a few times before you actually get it correct here. Okay, so I'm placing the shock shaft up and down here a few times here. There we go. I don't see any more air coming out of there. That is really nice. The reason why you don't want air inside your shocks is because air is compressible, oil and water is not. Having air inside of your shocks will give you an unreliable feel to your shocks, so that's why you don't want any air bubbles whatsoever. Alright, so I'm going to take a little bit of this 300, just a tiny drop of it. I'm going to place it onto the top of this I'm going to place it on the top of this diaphragm. What I'm going to do is I'm not going to put the diaphragm straight down here. I'm just going to kind of slide it from one side to the other. You can kind of see here. That way we don't pick up any air bubbles. It's going to go just like that. And keep in mind that the shock shaft is pulled all the way down in the lowest position here. I want to keep that right about there. I'm going to take the top of the shock with the shock end on it and place it over as carefully as I can. You're going to get some overflow here, which is fine. I'm going to kind of turn this just a little bit till I feel a click, and then I'm going to slide this guy on. There we go. Great. That felt awesome. One of the easier ones I've done, actually. Okay, so, and tighten it down. Now you can, before you tighten everything down, turn the top of the shock here to where Yokomo is lined up. You can do that if you want, make it look like you know what you're doing. But I'm going to take the top of the shock here, I'm just going to tighten it down just a little bit more. And here's what it should look like when you compress the shock here. So let me see if it'll focus on me. So you should push it down and it should slightly rebound and have a little bit of internal pressure that's going to push that out. And what that is that's the diaphragm in the inside getting pressed and then pushed back out, and pressed and pushed back out. So that's what's making that this little bit of rebound coming out here. They should all feel about the same. So since this is the rear shock, we're going to use the pink spring, I believe. Just going to slide the pink spring over the shock here, and we have the lower shock. Let's see here. Okay, so the rear shock retaining clip is going to look like this, and the front is going to look a bit different. It's going to look a bit like this. And so all you do is you take the spring and you compress it and you slide this over the shaft, and then everything seats down like this. So it's going to look like that. That is your rear spring. So I'm going to do the other three and I'll join you guys in just a little bit. Alright guys, I'm done building my shocks, and I put a little note in the video how I did not use these little O-rings. I forgot that I actually excluded these from my other build. You don't need them. These adjustment rings, they don't move because of the fine pitch of the threads here, and it just makes adjusting your shocks a pain. So I would say leave those out. I went ahead and did that myself. So basically I've got two shocks here for the front and two shocks for the rear. Rear one's being a slight bit longer. All you gotta do is to snap them right over the top of the shock balls there. The shock balls, lovely. Alright, so and the other spot on the bottom here, just gonna push it right on. Goes on fairly easily. Once again, the front ones are the slightly shorter ones. Now, I can put this on the front the same length. That's okay. You can do that as well. I'm choosing to do the way your shocks are slightly longer than the front ones. There you go. So you get slightly more travel here. We can do more negative travel. See that for it. Nice. There we go. Alright, so we have shocks. And look, it sounds really great. All nice and smooth. Alright, we'll get to the next step here. Also guys, if you're going to do the mod where I'm adding 200 weight oil into all the shocks, keep in mind that one of these little vials is not enough for 4 shocks. It's enough for 3 shocks. So make sure if you do this, you're going to have some shock oil on hand to use. That's going to be the same. That's going to be the same liquid weight. Alright guys, we're on to page 20 and bag 11. Even though this is bag 11, it doesn't say bag 11, but it has some bumper pieces and also some body posts and the little guides here that help keep your body from getting scratched by the body post, and also we put a body pin through here to keep the body height correct. So let's go ahead and take these off here. I'm going to put on the front one. We're going to be using some M3x12 screws here. Pausing. Okay guys, they show to put this on the car first and then put on these posts, but I'm going to do this a little bit differently. I'm going to go ahead and put the posts on first and then put it on the car. I'm such an innovator, I tell you. Okay guys, and when you're doing this, you obviously want to have the pins, the holes going towards the side of the car like this and not like this. Got it? Alright, so let's go ahead and put this front bumper on. It's going to go right here. Helps to prevent the front of the frame from getting split by hitting things. And it works really, really well. So I'm just going to flip this over real quick, being careful of the gears there. Alright guys, let's go ahead and place the rear body posts. It's going to screw in from the carbon side into the plastic here. Keep in mind there is a small open end, small end here, and a large end. You can put the large end towards the screw as it goes in. So we have 4 button head screws here, which are going to be taking the duty of placing these on there. Alright guys, what do you think so far? Pretty cool. Let's see what else we need to do here. Alright guys, of course we got to put the bumper on. Let's go ahead and put this little fuzzy guy on here. This is nice and protective. And we have 2 more screws to put on here. Now my other car, because I've had some bodies that have a very short front end, I've had to cut away some of the plastic for the bumper, which is something you can do and still remain and have a bumper there, which is kind of nice. So I've got these 2, I believe these are 10mm screws here. These are M3x10s, so we're going to go ahead and place these in. Alright, we're going to place on the rear diffuser now. This is in this bag here. It has the small and the large. I'm going to go ahead and put the large on. There is little wings that go on the side that you can choose to put them on or not. I'm going to choose to not do that. So this is the rear diffuser. It goes on the back of the car like this. And like I said, if you want to put on these little side fins, you certainly can. This is the smaller version. As you can see, it looks very similar in case you've got a car that is interfering with these side fins here. So I'm just going to toss this in the back in the box. And with that, and we should have some screws to put this on. Alright, so we have our front and rear done. Pretty cool. I like it. It's really nice. I can't wait to try this out. So let's see what else we have going on here. So I think what I'll do is I'll grab myself a set of wheels, and we shall put the wheels on just so we know what it looks like, and maybe just slide a body over the top of the body pin, since I do have a couple of bodies hanging out here. Let's see if I can get this axle back in. I can show you guys how to put the wheel hubs on. Now there is wheel hubs for the front and rear, which are on this number 1 tree, I believe, which is like this. Okay guys, the 12mm hubs, the thicker version, you can see that these are thicker than these ones here. The thicker ones go in the front, and we're going to place a pin through the front of these axles here. And we have the pins here on our little trusty tool case here. We're just going to place that pin through and place the hub right on top. A good upgrade to this kit would be to have the aluminum hubs which lock onto the axle. I really like those because they don't come off. Sometimes when you pull off hard, tight-fitting wheels, they don't come off at all. So, all right. Okay guys, we have all the hubs on. Let me just grab a set of wheels here and we'll see what this looks like on the table. Guys, thanks for hanging with me there. There was supposed to be a time lapse of me dialing in the front end of this car here. You can see we have some pretty nice lock here, and also some nice Ackerman does a really nice job here. So I don't have my servo in or anything else in, obviously. We're going to do the electronics video next. We'll get this thing up and running and at the track pretty soon. Then we go ahead and grab a body and we'll check out what it looks like with a body on. Obviously, it's going to look like a car, so let's check out, see how this thing sits. Now, I don't have any of the body things that are going to hold the body up off the wheels here, but let's just check out to see what this looks like. And the bumper is scraping here just a little bit. This is my S13, S14 Boss. I can't remember if it's S14 or 13. It's got this back end. You guys will know. This is make sure you guys. So this body was sold to me by one of the guys at JGT. His name is Nico. He's a real nice kid, and he just made the Swiss Sons race team, the drift team there, as well as I did as well. So, man, this is a great looking car. So it's great to know that there's a lot of great technology underneath the hood. I'm going to be testing and tuning this thing coming up pretty soon as we get the electronics in. Thank you so much for joining my video. I hope you enjoyed it. Hopefully it sheds a little bit of light on how to build this nice car. We will talk to you guys later. Thank you so much, and we'll see you. Bye.